Good evening. I'm Bernard Green. I'm chair of the Select Board Committee on Policing Reform. Today is the regular meeting of the committee for February 17, 2021. Let's start off with announcements and updates, and I'd like to use this time to announce that last night at the Select Board meeting, the Select Board voted to appoint Sasan, tell me your last name.
Sure, it's Sasan Zalkha.
Okay, to the committee here to replace Jonathan Mandy, who, as you know, had to leave the committee because of issues with his father's health. So, welcome, Sasan, to the committee. And does anyone else have announcements or updates they'd like to make right here?
Can I ask if Sasan could give us a 30-second to 90-second introduction of himself?
Absolutely. Excellent idea, Marty. Thank you for stating it. I usually forget those little details. Sasan.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So my name is Sasan Zalkha. I moved to US in '95. I was 13 years old, immigrated from Iran through the refugee program. I've been living in Brookline since. I went to Brookline High for high school. I attended BU for my undergrad, and then I attended MIT for grad school. My field of expertise is biomedical engineering. I worked on various medical devices that are used at the hospital. And also on my spare time, I've been trying to work with the community. I'm a town meeting member in 2018, and pretty much try to be engaged with the community as much as I can. I have two children. One is 1.5, and the older one is almost 3. So we had them kind of back to back. My whole family lives in Brookline, so we've become Brookliners in the past 20 years.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this committee.
We're going to work you hard. And even though we're about to present our report to the Select Board on March 2nd, there will be issues that will require continual work by some of the subcommittees. So I want to make sure that we are fully staffed to complete those tasks. So any other announcements or updates? No? Okay. Next, we're going to have public comment at the end, but I want to let everyone know that if they have a comment during the meeting, that they can use the chat box to give that comment to members of the committee. And Devin, could you make sure that you capture any comments because they disappear once the meeting closes?
Yes, and
Okay.
Attendees should be encouraged to use the Q&A feature.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Okay, minutes. The minutes were in the packet. They also include some comments by Marty, which I thought were a little difficult to read. And he'll acknowledge that. So what I did is his comments related to the presentation by Howard Friedman, which he thought, and I think correctly so, that it was such an important presentation that it was necessary for us to give a detailed account of it in our minutes. So what I did is I took Marty's minutes and looked at, or Marty's comments, my notes and other materials, and put together a revised detailed presentation of that part of our meeting, which is in the packet. And I'd like to move that the minutes be edited to include that that description of Howard Friedman in the minutes. So
Second.
okay. So with that amendment, is there any other edits that people want to make to the minutes, or any comments?
Bernard, I have a quick question. I didn't look at the updated packet, and I welcome what you did. I'm sure you described my verbiage accurately. The question is, one of the questions I had about the earlier minutes was it included 2 questions by committee members, but didn't give any responses by Howard. Did something get added?
Yeah, from
Okay.
my notes, I was able to reconstruct the answer that he gave. So
Great, thanks.
okay, so I move approval of the minutes as amended. All in favor, just raise your hands, please. Okay, that looks like it passes.
Sasan has to abstain.
Yeah, it says, yeah, Sasan's abstained.
You'll learn parliamentary procedure
Yeah.
for better
Thank you for
and
pointing
worse.
that out.
Okay, it takes a while, Sasan. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay, next, I just want to say that the subcommittee reports are in, I think, good shape in terms of the substance. The role of the drafting committee and me, as I think I should be called editor, is to take those reports and make sure that they're coherent as a whole. For example, I put out a template that's in the packet also with respect to how I'd like each report to be organized, with an introduction, with a outline of contents, an introduction, and the recommendations at the end. So I think most of the reports are in that are within that framework, but the drafting committee will sort of make sure that everything is coherent like that, and eventually we'll have to work to make sure that the fonts are the same, the font size is uniform throughout the report, etc. But that's the job that we have.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Two questions. As some of you know, I've been an interloper on a couple of other subcommittees as well as the accountability one. So I have 2 questions. And I probably should have known this answer already. On the accountability report, is the PCAC, the advisory committee report going to be a separate thing, or is that going to be integrated? Michael, I should know the answer to that, Michael, but because that has a commentary as well, and I haven't really immersed myself in either of the commentaries.
Yeah, the way that's set up is that there is a commentary about the PCAC, and the actual document is an appendix. And I think that the recommendation is that the select board adopt the PCAC. And matter of fact, in the Civil Rights Militarization and Mass Events report, there's also a recommendation that the PCAC be adopted by the select board, because in that report, there are a number of tasks that they assign to the PCAC. So
my second question is, assuming I can get to, I do have some red lines I've started to make on several of those. The civil rights, I've been doing it online, and Paul's been looking at them, which I appreciate. But the question is, should I do that on the individual drafts at this point, or wait until you have a coherent combined thing? And I guess that question would apply to anyone else who might be crazy enough to do what I'm doing.
Well, I hope everyone's crazy enough to do that. But what we're trying to do is to get all the reports coming out of the subcommittees into the web page of the committee. Correct me if I'm not correct, Devin. And that would be then a public document that people can make their edits to, publicly.
Well, let me rephrase that last question and make it simpler. When is the drop dead deadline for interlopers like myself to send comments on the reports?
I hate to tell you, but the drop dead deadline is probably this weekend.
All right.
You know, we're really running up against a wall of our March 2nd presentation to the select board.
Okay.
It's going to be difficult. And, you know, by the way, the drafting committee, you know, will, you know, look at the reports for purposes of accuracy, but the responsibility is on the subcommittees to make sure their reports are accurate, but also that they that the language they use is accurate. You know, the terminology and other things. So
When do you hope to have a combined document, but in the same time frame, like by the weekend? Or the...
that should be. I thought it was going to be on the web page in the packet, but only the accountability report is in the packet. So I'm going to ask Devin to make sure that all the other reports are in that packet so that you can start working on them immediately.
Yes, I will ask all of the subcommittee chairs to send me a PDF of their reports in their most final version for that review.
You know, actually, I sent a PDF of all the reports to Kate at the select board office. I asked her to print them out. So I will forward that PDF to you, Devin, or those PDFs to you.
Okay, and you just downloaded them today. So that just, as long as all chairs are aware that that was downloaded at whatever time. So any edits that you may have made after that time would not be captured then. I think that's the most important part with Google Docs, is that because it's a living document and people can pop in and make edits whenever, we want to be sure that we're getting, you know, your most recent, the one that you're all set with for this final compilation process.
So that means that people should go to, explain to me where they should go, but go to some place where they can make any further edits to the document. And where is that? That's the committee's webpage?
So it's not entirely clear to me that all subcommittee chairs have shared their Google Docs with all committee members. I think that maybe they were just being shared with their subcommittee members.
Yes.
So at this point, we can do things one of two ways, sort of as Marty stated. Either all of the subcommittee chairs can share their Google documents with the rest of the full committee, and then edits can come through that way in the individual subcommittee reports. Or if folks can commit to, you know, getting me the PDF of their most recent, you know, reports that are sort of ready for full committee scrutiny, I can put those all in, you know, one condensed document in a packet for you to make edits over the whole document throughout this weekend, with the idea of, you know, perhaps getting something ready for the public hearing on, you know, Monday evening or Tuesday. So that's up to you all, how you want that process to run. You can be making your edits in the individual subcommittee Google documents, and then on Monday we can take all of the final documents based on all committee members' feedback and then put it into one document, or you can look at it as one entire document. So I think that's a process question that you all need to figure out, and I'm happy to help facilitate either way.
Okay, what makes sense to people?
Well, I'll jump in since I brought this up, and because I'm afflicted with the OCD that will probably look at a lot of these. I think it'd certainly be easier for me to have them all in one document and try to look at them all over the week on the weekend and get them back to Bernard by Sunday night, rather than do them separately. Among other things, I know I have links for 2 of the reports. Anyway, I just find it easier to work that way, and I would do them all in one document, if that's okay with Bernard.
Oh, that's okay with me. But my question though, Devin, I know you answered it, but just to make sure, when I send you the 5 PDFs and you put it into one document, are we going to be able to edit that document?
No, so then what would happen is the individual edits would go back to those subcommittee chairs. They would make the edits in each section and then would send the final back. So that is sort of the rationale that a lot of people use with the Google Docs, because the edits, comments can be made in live time and then exported into their final version. But it's just
Okay, so I'm confused.
it's a preference.
Okay, so the only way that the entire committee can edit the documents or the reports of individual subcommittees is if each subcommittee makes the entire committee a shared or shares the document with the entire committee, so that the entire committee can go into Google Docs and make suggested edits. Casey?
Can I just clarify on that? So we want to make sure that if we're sharing the document with the total committee, that they're in the suggestion mode as opposed to the editing. Is that correct? So that the
Correct.
subcommittee can review the comments made by the larger committee.
Okay.
Actually, can you clarify that? Because being an ignoramus, I didn't know about suggestion mode.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that would just mean that you would be able to like write comments. You wouldn't actually be changing the document. There's also, you can review different levels within the Google document of who made what changes.
Okay, my question is, can we restrict the Google Docs document to only suggestions for everyone except the chair of the committee?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to do that.
The follow-up on that, if the chairs who have created their respective Google Docs want to come to me offline and talk about the logistics, I'm happy to do that. The other recommendation would be, instead of exporting your subcommittee reports as a PDF, you could do it as a Word document, and then folks could use track changes, but that can be a little bit messy.
Yeah, this whole thing is messy, and I think the easiest way is to give everyone suggestion sharing rights in the Google Docs, and the chair of the subcommittees have editing rights. And maybe Friday and then again on Monday, we send a PDF of what has of the report as edited to you for posting on the website. Is that going to work? Wait, is that going to work, Devin?
Well,
yes.
Okay.
Although let me push back on something there, because and I want to get Paul's input on this, because on his report, I've been suggesting changes in the document like a red line, and Paul's been looking at them one by one and adopting some and changing others. Seems to me that's easier than putting comments into the margin. And I don't, if I were doing the final edits on those, I'd find it easier to do that than read the margin comment and then decide what to do. Plus, with a margin comment, you have to somehow make it clear exactly where it's going, like after what word, which sometimes isn't that sometimes hard to decipher. I don't know. It just seems.
Marty, I think you're doing it right. I think what you're doing is exactly what we want. We want the edits to show, but that if it's not the comments, you can add a comment additionally, but your edits, instead of just wiping out like a paragraph of text, it will show that your suggestion is to remove portion and then to add a portion.
So what if you want to replace a couple of words? If you want to replace a couple of words, does that show that you've replaced them?
Yeah, if you're in suggestions, then when you replace a couple words, it shows your insertions and your deletions, and in the margin, there's going to be, who did it and what they did.
I mean, I hate to belabor this, but it's important given our deadline. I'm looking right now at one of the pages, the one on civil rights that I've been suggesting things. And I guess what I'm not seeing is the word suggestion anywhere.
It's up in the upper right-hand corner. It probably says edit, but then you click on the caret there, and the drop-down box will give you suggestions, edit, and one other
You know
thing.
what I think I see now what I've done wrong is that I didn't have it in full screen. And
Okay.
in the half screen, it doesn't have that word suggestions.
Yeah.
All
okay.
right. Okay, I think I'm all set, and if not,
If not, it'll just be more chaos.
Yeah.
Any rate,
This is Devin. I just want to let all of the committee chairs know I will be putting a contact info document in the OneDrive so that you can grab everyone's email accounts and put them into your respective subcommittee reports.
will that include phone numbers?
no.
Because I've been bugging for that for 6 months. I've gotten a few ad hoc, but can't they include phone numbers?
I can
Well,
back-
what? I mean, I guess if you have the phone numbers, Marty wants them, so if you can send them to him. But
Well, I've called some people. I mean,
what we're talking about now, Marty, is in order to share a Google Docs, we need the person's email, and
all right. I'll
give
withdraw
all
that
the
question.
emails so
All
that we
right,
can.
that's a separate issue. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion of that before I go on? I want to just make sure that people, aware that the subcommittee chairs are going to have to be responsible for the accuracy. I think I may have said this already. So just double check, make sure you're accurate, make sure you're using the right terminology, spelling people's names right, etc. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes over here. So when we present our report to the select board, I'm going to need to present recommendations sort of as the main focus of the presentation. So, the recommendation should be concise, to the point, and in that separate section of the report at the end, so that I can lift them out and discuss the recommendations with the select board. And of course, presumably the select board is going to read the full report, but we need to separate out the recommendations, because that will be what they will be voting on. I mean, they'll be voting on accepting the report, but also specifically voting on specific recommendations. For example, they will vote on whether to adopt the proposed police commissioner advisory committee. So you make sure that the recommendations are concise, to the point, and in that separate section of the report.
Bernard, I have another question on that.
Okay.
I thought that this still going to be called an interim report?
I'm going to fudge that question by just calling it a report.
Today or for the report?
Well, I'm going to call it a report, and in the report there'll be proposals to continue some of the work, with the members of the committee who want to continue beyond March or beyond March.
But that brings me back to what you just said that triggered my question, which is, I certainly had the impression, and maybe others did not, that nothing would be voted out of this report except for maybe the PCAC, but that we were not asking immediate action yet. So when you say the board is going to look at things to vote, that surprised me. We have a lot of recommendations that are not ready for voting.
Okay, so that's why I say that, you know, the committee will continue beyond March. But, you know, to the extent we have recommendations that are actionable and can be voted by the select board, they will take those up at the March third week or third Tuesday in March, I think it is.
Then let me make one more suggestion on that specific to make that clearer for everybody, including them. I assume you're going to draft an introduction of some kind. I didn't look at the template that's in our packet, but it seems to me that that should highlight things that you believe and get our feedback on whether any of us disagree are ready for votes.
Yeah. No, I circulated a template that talks about that. And, you know, we're going to have a preface, which would be written by me. I'm sorry, a forward, which would be written by me as chair of the committee. That just basically, I mean, it's going to be a relatively short document. A forward written by or signed by the committee chairs, sort of talking about what they do. And I guess the introduction, which would be, you know, more detailed kind of executive summary of the report. So yeah, we have to get those together by the weekend also. But those parts of the report don't have to be ready for the hearing on the 24th, right? But they do have to be ready for the select board.
All right. Well, I guess but I don't know if I made myself clear in my last. What I was suggesting is that somewhere in that beginning section, that anything that you believe, and I hope you'll take feedback from us, are ready for an actual vote right now, that you should have them highlighted in your early section, not just at the very end, which will be several pages of recommendations. See what I'm saying?
No. Repeat it.
There's going to be a lot of recommendations, right?
Right.
I mean, there's maybe 50. I don't think they should just be all at the very end without it being readily apparent. And I think in the introduction sections, which ones are asking for immediate action.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that the ones that are proposed for immediate action should be in the introduction.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the point of the introduction.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, I talked about that. Okay, so let's move on the agenda to follow up on tasks from our last meeting. One of the tasks was to put together a survey of police officers or police department employees to get a sense of, you know, their thinking and incorporate that into our report. So who would like to report on that? Elizabeth, that was sort of.
Sure, happy to do that. Yeah. Okay. So thanks to tremendous work by Michael Zurab and Janice and Michael Keaveney, we actually, and Ron, we actually have a survey that is close to final. I would say 85, 90% finalized. We're working on distribution, hoping to do that through the union, through Michael Keaveney through the police union, and Liz Williams through the, is it Williams? Am I saying that right, Michael? Is that right? Yep. Liz Williams through the Teamsters for the dispatchers, and through the chief to the non-union personnel. So we've got a plan for that. Ron, thank you so much, is going to put it into SurveyMonkey for us. We're anticipating distributing it. We're hoping to distribute it on Monday, the 22nd, with the idea that we would ask for it back on the 28th. So it's one thing that's going to be pretty late, Bernard, for the report. Yeah. But we'll figure out in our little working group, we'll figure out how to amalgamate the results. We're trying to make sure the survey is anonymous so that people can be very honest with us. Right. And we could actually, Devin, I did send you the link. If people would like to actually see the survey, we could actually screen share that. We could also talk it through if that would be helpful to people. We certainly would appreciate feedback. I have to say, Janice and Michael have worked really hard on getting these questions right. And so I hope we don't do too much more wordsmithing because they've spent a lot of time already thinking it through. But just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, at the beginning, we're trying to understand who is responding to the survey. We want to know why people are there. These are more general questions about the department itself. Give you a chance to look at that. Yep. We're concerned about retention, as Marty's brought up a couple times. We're wanting to know, are people satisfied? Are there reasons are people considering leaving? And then we try to get into understanding the quality of what people work with. And we learned a lot from the Newton survey, but this is certainly different than the Newton survey in some ways, but we borrowed some things from them for ideas. This is about the working, how the work goes within the department, and then how people in the department feel about these things. And then we try to understand kind of the work environment more. This is about promotions and retention, a lot about promotions and retention. We're really, we have realized after multiple conversations, that's an important aspect to address in the department. This is transparency and accountability. And we actually wanted to just point out, Janice made this point so clearly that our department is incredibly transparent and accountable. In fact, we're one of the few departments that we know of that posts statistics every year. But the officers may have a better idea of how we can do it even more. Work environment. Then we get into, we really want to get into the biases and how people are treated in the community. So both for officers and if they see bias by community members as well. So these are bias questions. Bias within the department, bias outside. This is about whether or not 911 calls could be handled more. Are there calls that could be handled better elsewhere by another entity? Safety, work safety, and then community relationships. Community perception. And then finally, there's a question about the next police chief, knowing that is coming up. And then obviously we want to know if we didn't ask something that somebody wants to tell us about. And then the final demographic questions are very optional, and we prefer not to answer at the beginning because we want to emphasize that people do not need to answer these questions if they're worried that they might give away their anonymity. But we do feel if we did have some of this information, it might help us understand some of the amalgamated answers a little more effectively. So it's useful information, but we really want people to answer the question. We're more interested in people answering the questions than we are about this information. So that was the gist. Janice, Michael Keaveney, Ron, you want to add anything? Everybody's been great on this, working really hard on it.
I think you've covered it well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. To spell out one thing you've alluded to a bit, one concern we heard that Michael Keaveney helpfully raised is that, the department's relatively small and certain combinations of gender, race and rank, for example, are basically identifiable. And so we've removed some questions and coarsened some categories, and we're trying to also just emphasize that certain responses are optional to try to mitigate that concern. It's tricky because it's very useful, for example, to know what women think about gender bias in the department. But if people aren't going to respond because, revealing that information essentially identifies their response, that's not good either. And so, that's something we've really been struggling with, but we're trying to make progress on. But that was a really helpful point that we got from feedback from people in the department.
Marty's got his hand up, but Janice, do you want to add anything else? Because you were really instrumental in getting feedback from what Newton did and what worked and what didn't. Do you want to say anything else about that?
Well, Newton Newton had a lot of different questions actually than what we're doing now. It was I thought it was a good way to judge the kinds of questions that we might be interested in asking. But I think that Michael Zorub in particular did a good job of making it more for Brookline. And we did try to ask things. Retention, I think, is an issue largely because we put a lot of money and time into training our officers, and then if they leave, we lose all of that value really that we have put into our department. And so some of the questions get at issues of retention in different ways so that we can maybe get a little bit better insights into that, since I think it helps the department to have people who know the people who live here, who have long-standing relationships or with the community. So anyway. Yeah.
Marty's got a question, but Michael Keaveney, do you want to add anything? Because you really were really helpful on this project.
Not too much. I'm actually interested to see the results of the survey myself. I'm just, I'm glad to see, some organization taking an idea and looking into what the officers are actually thinking in their own minds, instead of, for the most part, they're unheard of. You don't really get to hear from them, so this will be a good way for everyone to speak their mind, and hopefully that word will spread.
Yeah. Good.
Sorry,
Let me-
Marty. Yeah, Marty had a
wanna-
question, Bernard. I don't know if you can see his hand up.
He's ignoring me.
No. Okay. Juggling the mouse and everything else is not easy. And so Marty, what do you have to say?
Two questions. I'm very happy this is being done. I think it was a great idea. And one question, the simple one, is it looked awful long, and I don't know if Michael thought that it would, here I am, the king of too long. But do you think it's too long, Michael, or do you think the officers will be happy to do it?
You'll get more responses the shorter the survey is. I'm going to advocate strongly that everyone takes this survey, and hopefully that does the trick. But I will say that a shorter survey will likely result in more responses.
Well, I, for one, would authorize those who've been working on this to see if they could cut out a few questions. But let me get to my second thing, which is more substantive. As Elizabeth knows, and maybe some of you, I've been very concerned about the retention issue. Is there a chance of getting back on the screen? There was one question about, have you considered leaving the department? Is there a chance of getting that on the screen again? Because as I looked at it very quickly with everyone else, and I've been doing an informal survey the last few days because I've had NSTAR people in front of my house, and one of them happened to be Michael Keaveney on the details, but two others the last couple of days. I've been asking about the retention issue, and it strikes me that looking at the language that you have may not be the perfect way to capture that issue, because it said something that, have you considered leaving? I forget exactly the
We never
language.
seriously considered leaving the BPD. It's
Yeah,
It's early. There it is. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my problem with that language, which is the people who have stayed may not be the best people to ask that question. So is there a chance of rephrasing that to talk about the people that they know have left? Like one of my conversations this morning before Michael with the officer that preceded him said that two people left for communities that were quite shocking to him and me. One was Everett and one was Weymouth. So I'd be more interested in the people who have left. So is the way to ask about something about why do you think people leave the department as opposed to why have you stayed? See what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a much more pertinent question. Elizabeth,
I think
anyway.
they're both really important. I mean, you're right that we're asking the survivors, so to speak. We're asking the people who haven't already chosen to leave.
Right.
But obviously, we don't want them to leave either, it seems to me, unless they're, I mean, generally speaking, we probably don't. So their perspective is important. I think your point's well taken, though. It would be very helpful to hear from the people who actually did leave.
Well, we're not going to get to do that in this time frame, but it seems to me I've gotten good feedback the last couple of days about why people leave, but it's all been from people that have not seriously considered leaving. So we're going to miss. I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's the open-ended thing, right? Like they can volunteer whatever info they want, such as why other folks have left. I mean, we're cross-pressured, right? We don't want to make the survey any longer, but
what about just one question about why do you think other people have left?
Yeah,
that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, perhaps we can do that. Sorry, Elizabeth.
I was just gonna say, we do have a list of people that we can reach who have left the department, but we knew we couldn't do it in this time frame. So I would say that it is really important information, but this may be some of the information that comes in as a recommendation in the personnel subcommittee report, that we follow up with those officers who have left and take into account their information. I think there's a way to get that, even if we can't get it in this time frame.
Yeah, I think that's good. And we should see the survey as also being a piece of information or data that will be used by the PCAC in their work. And maybe they're the ones who should follow up on the officers who have left, because I don't think that's going to be a short or an easy thing.
If I could just pipe in and say that, that's an actually decent question, because there are a number of officers that are considering it at the moment. And so they thought that question will get a decent response from those who are contemplating it as we speak,
So
Well,
you're
I'm
suggesting
satisfied.
an additional question?
Well, just on what Michael just said, the question's just going to be yes and no answer. So it's not going to really address the substantive issue.
Oh, it's open-ended, Marty. They can say whatever they want.
On that question?
Yeah. It's
Looks
yes,
to me
no,
like-
please explain.
Oh, I don't remember seeing that. All right.
Yeah. But
Okay, anyway, this is a good discussion, and I'm happy with the
Not only that, we can get at this issue through other questions, such as satisfaction with the department, how they feel about they're being treated by members of the community, by the town. I mean, there are many ways to sort of start to become clearer as to what dynamics are happening that might contribute to an officer considering leaving.
So I have one question. Do we have access to exit interview of officers who have left? Or is there a way to get that? Because a lot of that information would be in an exit interview.
We don't do exit interviews.
Right. I was going to suggest that maybe that's a recommendation, that we do exit interviews, not only of officers that leave for other departments, that transfer or retire, but also we recently had a chief of police who stepped down, and to my knowledge, there was no exit interview conducted of his sudden departure, which I think could have been quite enlightening for this committee.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea, and that could be recommended also to go to the advisory committee to see those on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I'll just take that one step further, that perhaps also as exiting select board members are not fulfilling their role as police commissioners, that there's an exit interview as well with the commissioners to see how that role is working, and as well with the police advisory commission that we're suggesting.
Well, speaking from personal experience, if someone exits the select board because they get defeated for re-election, they're not going to care about an exit interview.
But they may have interesting perspective to share in terms of their role as a police commissioner. That
all right. Anyway, that's
important.
Or people who voluntarily leave.
No, I know that.
Can I ask?
Yes.
It seems like this will be very valuable. What is the plan once it's done, as far as distribution, who will see it? Well, who will see it?
Well, my thinking is that number one, we'll put, to the extent we can, the results of the survey in our final report. But secondly, more long-term, the committee should probably continue operating to finalize the report, maybe do the interviews or exit interviews of people who have left, maybe an interview of Chief Lipson. And the results of that, as well as the various other surveys that are floating around, would be something that would be available to the PCAC, which of course I'm assuming will be adopted.
We have
Okay.
one vote clearly on the select board.
Yes, one vote, at least.
But I think the exit interview idea is really good, and I mean, it's should have been done yesterday, but hopefully we can get it done soon.
Okay.
So that would be a recommendation of your personnel committee, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Sorry to suggest one more question, because I was the one who brought up, is it too long? But another thing that I've talked about, at least with Elizabeth and maybe some of you, is apparently not many of the patrol people are applying for promotion to sergeant over the last few years.
Yeah,
Talked about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm wondering if a question, assuming that the draft people can delete a few questions, is there a chance of adding a question? Have you considered applying to be promoted? And if not, why not? Because I think that's a big issue.
I think because it's such a clear cut, either you are applying or not, because it's a civil service test, that I think maybe just asking, have you tested for promotion? And if not, why not?
That's fine,
very specific for.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine wording. But from what I'm hearing is people don't apply because the pay differential is not enough to apply. And I think that's a serious issue.
Yeah, okay.
So Bernard, I want to comment on the whole issue of the surveys.
Okay.
I've done a good bit of that work in another life, and it's a complicated business. It's not as simple as it might seem, and it can seem simple. It depends on what the objective of the surveys is. It depends on how and what the questions are. So my thought would be that this ought to be at least we should get some outside professional to review what we are proposing. It's not quite as simple as it might seem looking at what I've seen.
Well, we don't have time for that, but we can.
I mean, I'm reasonably well acquainted with Eitan, who's a Tufts professor, who's on the reimagining task force, who can maybe provide an outside perspective. I mean, I think a lot of the folks who are involved with drafting it do this with some frequency, but I like the idea of trying to get another set of eyes on it. So I mean, we don't have a ton of time, but
almost in the nature of a peer review, if you will.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea. The link is available, so if anyone knows someone who they would like to have a look at it, it'd be fantastic. I think, especially since it would be good to make it a bit shorter. If anyone sees some questions they think we could live without or that are redundant, that would be especially helpful, I think.
Okay, so say again, when are we going to put this survey out?
The goal is to have it distributed on Monday, February 22nd, with a return date of the 28th. So that we, and the working group needs to figure out how we're going to pull together the results. So I don't know that they'll make it into the report, Bernard.
No.
But we might be able to have a wet read of the results. Janice, your help. Oh, great. Thanks, Janice. Bailing me out here. Good.
I just want to respond a little bit to Raj's comment. It has a lot of validity. I have a doctorate in social sciences. I have written many surveys and done many surveys. I think what's really unique and positive about this particular survey is that typically you don't get the end users' opinions in the creation of the survey. And in this case, we actually have run it by a police officer who can give us feedback from the group that's going to be actually answering the survey. I think that's a tremendous advantage, frankly, than people who are in totally different fields creating a survey for one that has very specific requirements and issues and work environments. And so I understand. I think we are really under a tremendous time constraint at this point. And we have taken, I think, best practices from many surveys already. So, so I just want to say that I feel pretty confident that the approach that we're taking, given the time constraint, actually is a good one.
Okay, any other comments? Discussion of that? Okay, go forth and survey. Next, the public hearing on, well, actually, what I'd like to talk about next is the proposed hearing on the new police chief. That's another task for the committee beyond March 2nd. So, we should give some thought to that. I don't think we have to, talk about that too much today, but, just keep that in mind as something that, should be in our recommendation and it'd be one of our recommendations, and that we actually do at a later date. Next,
Bernard,
yes.
I'm not clear. Are you talking about our committee doing a hearing on the issue of the next police chief?
Yeah, that's what we talked about last week.
Right. I didn't think we decided that because I'm personally unsure that it should be our committee that does it.
Okay, then I guess we do have to discuss this. I mean, do you think it's a good idea? And if it is a good idea, who should do it? Well,
let me try to articulate what I was just thinking, which I haven't thought about a lot because I guess I wasn't clear that last week it became a hard and fast proposal as opposed to someone thinking about it. But for one thing, it seems to me that the appointment of a new chief is not going to be for at least a year, maybe 2 years. The board is going to form a committee. They're going to wait for these reports, which may not be final until some of us hang around until June and finalize some things. So then, then they get it before the summer. And then it's probably not till after that they even start talking about the process, which will clearly be a consultant, which has, I think, been the case on every chief that's been hired. So for one thing, it seems kind of removed. For another thing, one of the officers I've talked to the last few days has come up with a suggestion. I don't know if the board has talked about it, that Acting Chief Morgan be asked to be the actual chief for his remaining, it's only like 2 years, which would give more time for the process and would have the benefit of opening up another deputy position, which right now there's one vacant anyway, I think, from Mike Gropeman. And more deputies would then be available to apply for chief and would get more training on the managerial. So anyway, that's another wrinkle that means that it's kind of early to be talking about this. So I guess I'm not convinced, given the fact that we're going to have, some of us at least, more work to do after March 2nd or 8th or whatever it is. And given the fact that that process, you're talking about something, you know, at a minimum a year, year and a half, maybe 2 years later, it just seems like we could have the new advisory committee doing that. I'm not big on public hearings just for the sake of public hearings, as I've said before. At some point, we have to have a public hearing. And maybe we could invite comment on that question as part of our other public hearing. But I think the most we should do between now and whenever, whether it's June or May or whatever, is one public hearing. So,
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe I was wrong that we did not decide to actually go forward with that, or at least investigate the possibility. What do other people think?
I think we don't have time today to talk about this.
Okay.
I think we should just move on.
Okay, so that actually, I mean, maybe we can ask people if they have comments on that at the 24th hearing to give their comments. But
I think this idea that we're not going to hire a chief for 2 years, I don't think we should take Marty's comment at face value. He's not involved in that process. So I think we should, I think there's a lot more to discuss, but Devin keeps posting in the chat that we have 30 minutes left, and I think we should move on because it's not something we're going to do next week. So I think it's not as timely as our other items.
okay, Casey?
What group would that sit with? Do we want to get a group together to start talking about this, not at our main meeting, but to have a dialogue started either in the personnel subcommittee or a new subcommittee that's created? A working group.
Well, what about making that just a recommendation for the PCAC to consider? I mean, does that make sense to people?
yes.
So what was your recommendation? Which?
That the PCAC consider whether to hold a hearing to get public comment and ideas about what a police chief should, or what we expect of a police chief, and any other input that the public would have.
So realistically, what's the timeline for that, the PCAC to be created? I mean, we're talking probably a bit, and I think that it is an important community dialogue. I don't see a problem with this group beginning that discussion before then, because we really can't even start to think about a new chief coming in until a lot of this is put into place, right? I mean, there's what public safety looks like in Brookline right now might be very different in 6 months. And so,
right.
I mean, I think that it's an important conversation to start sooner than later. And I would like to just see maybe a working group that just gets together and start thinking about these ideas. I mean, I would say, I mean, it's important to get someone in the chief's position in our department.
Yeah.
So we should discuss this offline. I mean, I'm concerned about the time also.
Okay. Casey, why don't we discuss it and come up with some ideas? Okay. I mean, the PCAC, we're going to have a vote presumably at the end of March. And then if it's approved, it's going to take maybe a month or two to actually get it up and running. So, that's the timeline for that. I think,
I could
yes,
offer,
Elizabeth?
I could offer, Bernard, that we could put it on the Personnel Subcommittee's agenda tomorrow morning for further discussion. If people would like to join us for that, we could do that. I think we have time in our agenda to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's at 9 a.m.
That's the plan.
Yep.
That's the plan. And you'll send everyone a Zoom link, right?
I can do that. It's public. It's posted. But yes, I can do that too.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Next item is the public hearing. So we talked about the report in pretty much final form, subject to final editing, on the 22nd, which is a Monday, I believe. you know, hopefully people will have drafts of the report that they can send to Devin by Friday, so that it will be up on the website for people to look at during the weekend. In addition to, everyone will be granted access to the Google Docs versions of the document, of the reports, and hopefully they'll you know, look at that and propose any edits. So let's see. I guess the next question is publicizing our hearing, and I need to ask Devin, you know, what she typically does and whether there's something that we need to do in addition to that.
Sure. So the publicizing for this would be on the town social media accounts. It would also go out via Notify Me, which is the alert system built into the town's website. And obviously it will be posted on the town calendar. Normally what happens is if you all are signed up for the Notify Me alerts from this committee, you would get an email, you know, sort of with a link to the draft report and also the agenda for the public hearing. And you could then send that out to your networks. So you would forward it on, or, you know, post it on social media yourself. I can help you create a graphic, unless there's somebody in the group who feels comfortable doing that. That's something I can assist you with.
When you say, okay, when you say graphic, what do you mean? Just the way that the announcement and the link is set up?
Yeah.
Okay, so could you set up a graphic that you'll just send to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's fairly simple, right? I mean, it's not. And graphic doesn't mean pictures and everything. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just something that is more eye-catching on social media. So instead of just like writing text, it will be like an image with the link and information to the report and the registration page for the hearing. Okay.
So, for example, someone could take that graphic, send it to the town meeting's members listserv.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be always to forward the Notify Me email, which can include the graphic, but the problem with graphics is you really can't embed active hyperlinks into them.
Okay. So that the town meeting doesn't get 12 emails on this from the committee, could you send it to the town meeting listserv?
So I don't have access to the town meeting listserv.
I'm sorry.
But
what I will do that. Don't anyone else do it, okay?
Not.
Okay. Anything else on publicity? Any other ideas?
Bernard?
Yes.
Isn't this jointly with the task force?
No, they're having their separate meeting. Yeah.
All right.
There's just tonight, isn't it? At 7?
Yep.
All right, I missed that. Okay.
Okay. Which is why Devin has to get us off at I think 6:30. Okay. Hearing details. What I think we should do is just I'll give an introduction, and the main body of the meeting will be opening it up to public comment. Whatever anyone wants to say, and this will be recorded, so we'll have an ability to create pretty good minutes. And afterwards, if the public comment period dies down, we'll open it up to committee members to make their own comments, observations, maybe respond to people's comments if they want, or add their own. That sound like a good idea? Janice, you're smiling. What is that, positive or negative? You're muted.
No, I think what's been discussed is just right.
Yeah, okay. Marty,
I guess my question is, how do we feel and how do you feel about people engaging in any short dialogue with speakers? Because I personally, I know the way the select board does it at their public comment, but I find that probably necessary for that meeting. But in general, I find that a somewhat, I won't say disrespectful, but it just seems to me that a little dialogue or an answer to a question is a good thing. But I know that that's an issue in terms of prolonging the whole thing. So
yeah, I'm not so much concerned about prolonging it as the problem of chaos. I mean, that's one way to, you have a lot of chaos when people get into basically shouting matches.
Yeah, I think our committee's too big for that, but also I think we need to move on. We have 20 minutes and we haven't gotten to subcommittees, so I'd like to.
Okay, so let's talk about subcommittees, and let's start with the accountability subcommittee. Michael,
in the interest of
you
time,
opened your mouth.
In the interest of time, I don't think I need to say much. We have a draft report. I think folks, if they want to read it and give feedback, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
There were a couple of votes we had talked about taking. I'm actually not sure whether that's necessary or helpful, but I wanted to make sure we had the chance to do that.
Michael, this is Devin. So the votes are in your packet as proposed by the accountability, and we have noticed possible votes on the agenda. So if the committee is prepared to do that, we are in compliance.
Great. So there's, I mean, one vote is about the PCAC as an idea, this idea of having a committee that supports the select board in its role as police commissioners. And then the second is about the feedback form and associated policies and procedures that Ron largely worked on. I'm not sure. I mean, we can vote to approve them. They're going to be in our report. So it's one of those things where I'm not sure what the vote conveys exactly, but I do think it gives some finality to these ideas we've been working on.
Why don't we, what do you want to do, Michael?
I think I'm happy voting knowing that as long as folks know that the PCAC language is likely to be tweaked.
Yeah. So it's the concept that we'd be voting on.
Yeah, the general concept, and then the form and associated procedures. I mean, I'll defer to Ron for exactly what he wants, but I believe he wants us to vote on those, and I think that it's a good idea and it's in its final form. So I think we should do that.
Ron, you're muted. I see you talking, but you know.
I would like to vote.
Okay.
I think we've had ample time to look at the content.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, I think it makes sense for you to go ahead. I was going to say, why don't we take these one at a time? But
yep. Okay, I move approval of the feedback form and the procedures that we have in our packet and that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. All in favor? Let's see. Why don't you just raise your hand? Okay. Okay. All opposed? I see no opposed. Any abstentions?
So
no abstentions.
Folks with their cameras off will serve as an abstention.
Okay, well, that's Hassan who just joined the committee, Janice Khan, who's a non-voting member, and Michael Downey. So that's not an issue. Okay. Okay, so that's approved, Ron. Thank you for the idea and bringing the idea to fruition. I mean, it's really, I think, a great idea. It's going to be very, very important, to gauge the attitudes of the public to the police. So, Michael, you want the next one?
Yeah, although Devin said, was the funding source clarified in the supporting documents, which is a question I don't know the answer to. So.
Yeah, I thought Ron gave sort of a general estimate.
I gave an estimate for how much more it would cost without saying where it would come from. I have a feeling it would be a trivial, I happen to think it would be a trivial difference for the town IT department. I mean, it's just like going from $400 to $1,200 a year. I don't think that's a big deal. And
for SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, for SurveyMonkey, right. And there were other surveys that they might even want to use the same upgraded account for. And the other thing, the only other part had to do with resources, like how much time it would take. And the biggest resource allocation would be for the periodic report. That's kind of a joint effort of the police and the diversity committee. I put in using Casey's estimate, like 4 hours a month for them to do that. So
That's as detailed as it ever gets.
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
Time I spoke with the IT department, their understanding was that perhaps this committee would pay for it in its entirety for the first year, and then it would either go to the IT department budget or the perhaps the police department budget. But are you asking that we, this vote will tell the IT department that it will come out of their budget?
If we have money in our budget and we haven't spent anything, so far as I know, I think we have spent a little bit. It probably should come out of our budget.
I just want to be really clear.
Yeah. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes, let's vote yes on that.
Do we have an idea of how much money we're talking about?
$800.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Wait, were you opposed, Casey?
You muted, Casey.
I'm in favor, not
Okay.
opposed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. How about the PCAC now? You want to?
I'm sorry, can I go back to the previous item for 30 seconds? So
Sure.
we voted on what? That the $800 expense would be paid by who?
By us.
By us. The town meeting allocated an amount to cover the cost of the two committees, the task force and this committee, of about, I should remember this, it's $50,000, I think. And
yeah. Sorry. I just have the exact figure. So you all have $21,110 left of your allocation. The $50,000 was split between this committee and the task force to reimagine. So at this time, you have $21,110.
Okay, so we have enough money. And what's the amount from the task force? What's their balance?
They have $9,520 left.
Okay, so that reflects the survey they did with Tufts University. Okay, Michael, you want to present the PCAC for a vote?
Yeah, I think we should think of this vote as being the general concept, and very little is going to change between this and the final form, but there are certain tweaks that are happening very much in the weeds. So I'm hoping we can take a vote on the general concept of the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee, something kind of parallel to the Housing Advisory Board or the Economic Development Advisory Board, in being a committee that adds expertise and effort to enhance the select board's ability to carry out important oversight roles and support roles of the police department. And there's more details, obviously, in the procedure, in the charge, and in the explanation, but given the time, I think we should just do a roll call vote and move on to other committees.
And we've been discussing this for a while. So all in favor, please raise your hand.
Yeah, Devin sent a message about needing to do roll call votes, but we'd have to address that.
Okay, Devin, you want us to do roll call votes?
It is part of the law with these Zoom meetings, so I'm just I'm reminded of that.
I want to break the law. Okay, you read it. Okay, so we have to go back and do a roll call vote on the survey, or not the survey, the feedback form.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you run through quickly?
Raj Dahanda,
Yes.
Ronald Wilkinson,
Yes.
Marty Rosenthal,
Yes. Yes.
Lucy Hatchett,
Yes.
Robert Sable,
Yes.
Elizabeth Childs,
Yes.
Michael Zurob,
Yes.
Paul Yee,
Yes.
Sasan Zelka.
Abstain.
You should abstain, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, how about me?
Oh, and chair.
Yes. Okay, let's do the same thing for the PCAC.
Bernard, may I just advise people that what they're voting on is in the packet. It's pages 64 and 5 of the packet. Conceptually, it will be tweaked a little more by at least the subcommittee.
Right, and it's been available for a while, so.
Right.
And
All
we've
right.
talked about it. Okay, so Devin,
Roll call vote for the concept of the PCAC.
yes.
Elizabeth Childs,
Yes.
Raj Dahanda,
No.
Casey Hatchett,
Yes.
Robert Sable,
Yes.
Marty Rosenthal,
Yes.
Ronald Wilkinson,
Yes.
Paul Yee,
Yes.
Michael Zurab,
Yes.
Sasan Zelka,
No, abstain again.
Abstain. Abstain.
Bernard Green.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think that's it for us. Given
Okay. So next, civil rights, militarization, and mass events. Mr. Yee. Paul, what's up?
I'll make it real brief. So we had a drafting meeting. That was also a open mic meeting. No one participated in the open mic from the audience. The drafting meeting, we add a couple of new sections. The reason we receive more information from the police department was on traffic stops. That was updated for the year end 2020. Also, detailed information on field interview stops. And also the information on suspicious calls or suspicious persons that the police department responds to. The reason for delay in receiving information from the police department is that all of that has to be manually compiled in spreadsheets. That's not readily available as a computer run. So it took a long time for the police department to provide that to the committee. So we're going to integrate all that into our report. Hopefully we're coming down to the final stretch on our report, and we're working diligently to get it ready for everybody. So that's my report.
Okay. And there will be a recommendation with respect to how that data is made available. So, correct, Paul?
Yes.
Right, okay. And then I urge people to read the report. There's a ton of information. It is a long report, but a very, very important report. And all that we talk about in terms of, disparate treatment is discussed in that report with the background information and data. So I urge people to read it. So next is
Bernard,
yes.
I have one comment on that.
Okay.
I circulated last week, I think, to everybody, but I don't see it in the packet, which is fine. A case that came out from the appeals court last week. Langlek, Langlek, and there's one sentence in it that I've got blocked and pasted that I'd like to be in our minutes because we've discussed both at that subcommittee, which I've been interloping into, and also I think at the full committee, whether we should try to add criteria for police discretion in certain things. And I've been urging that, and some people felt it was either difficult, impossible, or a bad idea. And I'm going to send to everybody to be added to the minutes the one sentence from that case that basically suggests doing that.
Okay,
and,
why don't you send? Yeah. Why don't
should
you
I
send
put it in Q&A or chat?
what's the easiest for you, Devin?
It should be emailed.
Yeah. Okay. Email it to Devin.
So neither. Okay.
Pardon me? Yeah.
Neither one? Just an email?
Yeah, just an email.
Okay.
Okay. So community outreach, youth. and non-traditional roles. That is Elizabeth. No, that's Casey. I'm sorry.
So we did meet last week and we further discussed non-traditional roles and talked about emergency management and civilian mobilization and training for community organizations and emergency preparedness and safety. I'm hoping to schedule a meeting for us on Monday. The subcommittee preliminary report has been posted to the Google Docs, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from our committee on that document. And that's my quick update for the week.
Yeah, again, I urge you to read, urge committee members to read this subcommittee's report, particularly the discussion of the proposed homelessness task force, which actually is not a proposed task force, it's an active task force, which is sort of pulling together a lot of existing resources and existing activity. Okay, next is the Mental Health and Substance Misuse Subcommittee. And I hope you've footnoted why we're using misuse instead of abuse.
Yes.
Okay, so
Well,
anyway.
We haven't had a meeting since our last full committee meeting, but I have gotten comments on the report and I will be incorporating those into the report as edits this weekend. Our next meeting is Monday, the 22nd at 9 a.m. We're going to follow up on those comments to the report. And we're going to also follow up on the NPR interview by Terry Gross on Fresh Air with Rosa Brooks, who wrote the book Tangled Up in Blue. And it's a great interview, and we'll make that link is also up on our subcommittee website.
Terry Gross can interview anyone. It's a great interview.
She can. Yeah, it's a great interview. It's wonderful to listen to.
But I have to give a plug to Terry Gross. I mean, she's just incredible. Anyway, next is the Personnel Subcommittee.
Bernard, I have a question
again.
on the last one. Can we, I don't think I've seen a link for that report. Is that, no, I think I'm talking about personnel, which I think we went by. But I am going to attend the meeting tomorrow morning, and I wouldn't mind having a chance to just glance at the draft report.
Marty, we'll get that. I think we'll get that link out to you tomorrow after our personnel subcommittee. I think we'll be able to do it.
All right. Well,
I'm not sure that it's up on a link. I think it's in. I think I did the same thing with that I did with the mental health substance abuse, which is different.
Okay,
I'm sorry about that. It was just technically idiotic on my part.
That's okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, personnel.
Our next meeting is tomorrow. The 18th, we'll go over the report. I think we'll just have a quick conversation about the survey follow-up too, so that everybody is, in case there's any questions about that we need to address. And now we've added to the agenda under other, a conversation about the police commissioner public hearing question. So we will do that, and everybody's welcome, 9 a.m.
Okay, again, let me just mention that each subcommittee will give share authority to everyone on this committee. And the subcommittees will then send PDFs Friday to Devin to be posted on the webpage. And then again on Monday if there are any further edits. And actually, Devin, I will send you the PDFs of the current reports, so that you can put that up. And then as we get later iterations, they can replace them. Does that work for you?
I am a little bit confused by that, only because right now, I think with the exception of personnel, all of the links to the live living documents are up on the website. So
okay,
why would we put an older version?
No, never mind then. I have not found them on the website, so but that doesn't mean anything other than.
I've had trouble myself.
Yeah, so.
They're just linked on the subcommittee pages. And then if they're not on the subcommittee pages, what I do is I put them, whatever I get from each chair, I hyperlink in the posting on the calendar. So it's either tied to the meeting itself, or you can find it on the subcommittee page.
Okay, is that linked to the Google Docs document so that as people make edits to the Google Docs, it comes onto your page?
The links that are on the website are view only. So a random member of the public can click on it and see, you know, however many people are in that Google Doc at one time and that they're, you know, collaborating. If the document has been shared with you, then you are able to edit it, which is why I shared all the contact information earlier in the meeting for the chairs to send out to the committee after this meeting.
Okay. You know, I started out with WordPerfect. I guess I haven't really advanced beyond that.
Everyone's doing a great job.
Okay, so I guess the question is, or it looks like committee chairs don't have to do anything other than just edit their documents, and it goes directly into your webpage, right?
Yes. So on Monday at.
Well, that makes it easier.
On Monday at likely, you know, let's say 1 o'clock, I will go into each Google document and download the PDF to be compiled into the final document that I will post for the public hearing on Wednesday. And that's what I will be sharing for the public hearing, is all of those subcommittee reports compiled into one PDF. So by 1 o'clock on Monday, all subcommittee chairs should have their reports looking the way that they'd like them to. And I think it also makes sense for us to decide that that should be Arial or Times New Roman font with headers.
Okay, you're proposing Arial font, and what font size?
I think 12 is fine.
Okay. Not my favorite, but that's fine by me.
It doesn't have to be the last iteration. I'm just saying for this time. So 1 o'clock on Monday, I will download everyone's reports, and subcommittee chairs, you are responsible for sharing your subcommittee preliminary reports via Google Docs to all of your fellow committee members.
Okay, so this is easier than I thought.
Yes.
I was confused. Okay, so I guess that wraps everything up. We do have time for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to make a comment, please use the hand raise function. Devin Field, alternate chairs need Devin Field. Okay. Okay, Devin also said that she should also receive share authority in Google Docs.
Most of you have, but in case you haven't, my Gmail is in the OneDrive folder and also in the chat. There are 3 attendees here. No one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate that they would like to make a comment.
Okay, great. So unless there's anything else, we will end the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
I take 30 seconds for the survey question, being that we have money in the budget that it was allocated here. I really highly recommend that we get some outside consultant to look at it from the point of view of what are we trying to accomplish, and do these questions accomplish that?
Okay, does anyone want to do that or agree with that?
Just think we don't have time.
Yeah. Well, we've already approved that the survey questions, but I mean, Michael mentioned the member of the reimagining task force. We could just kind of ask. We can just kind of ask him to take a look at it. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
We have an expert right here. Janice is very expert on this, outstandingly so. Yeah. And she has gone through this thing with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, we can ask for more help, but frankly, we're not going to get better help than Janice.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Okay.
we should just go with it.
Okay, that's fine with,
And even Michael Zurab, who hasn't acknowledged it, is somewhat expert also.
Right. I was just going to say, Michael too has been doing this. I mean, this is your research. I mean, it's like these guys are better than any consultant we're going to get.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to say that about myself, but I
Okay,
think
I'll say it.
we have limited time. I mean, especially if we're going to pay somebody for it. I don't know how with like the contract, like I'm sure because we're a government, doing bidding is like not super straightforward. And
Well, there are ways. Well, this would be a small contract, but
yeah.
I still don't think we have time to do it.
But I'm happy to ask and ask other folks too. Devin says we need to end this meeting, so.
Okay. Meeting's ended.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you, Devin.
Good night.